All right, this is a comment that I just got on YouTube. Feel free to pause that and read it. Part of my job as someone who debunks 9/11 conspiracy theories is to be polite and not immediately assume that someone has malintent when they're discussing a conspiracy theory or something else. It's very hard to do that sometimes. I am going to try very hard to be nice because there's a lot of things that just don't make any sense. And again, I try not to assume that somebody is intentionally, pushing a false narrative, that they really believe the narrative they're saying. So I'm going to go bit by bit, and we're going to try to be nice. It's hard. All right. The morning those buildings were pulled, I was watching the news live, and they were announcing Building 7 fell in the background, but it was still on TV. Okay, so what they're referring to is the fact that the BBC reported that Building 7 fell about a half hour before it actually fell. There have been retractions, and there have been statements pretty much saying, yeah, it was an accident. We knew Building 7 was going to fall. Firefighters knew for hours before Building 7 fell that it was going to fall. That's why they pulled personnel away from it. That's why there's the famous line of Larry Silverstein saying, just pull it, meaning to pull personnel due to safety because they want to divert to the Twin Towers where there's actually people that are hurt and dying and stuck. Also, a lot of things were reported that day. There was a report that there was a bomb at the State Department, that something happened at the White House. The West Wing was on fire. So there's a lot of things that were reported that didn't actually happen just in the chaos of the day. We remember this one because it did eventually happen. Okay, the day before all this, Dick Cheney was on the news talking about the $5 billion that was missing. Okay, so Donald Rumsfeld, the day before, had a meeting or a press conference or whatever where he was discussing a bunch of money that was missing. It was $2.3 trillion, I believe, was missing. And it wasn't just money that they couldn't find, it was money they couldn't account for. So throughout the 90s, and really even before that, there were accounting issues with the Pentagon, and they had very out-of-date systems to keep up with financial tracking, and part of it was by design. The Pentagon's actually never passed an audit, but that was a political shot at the Clinton administration. That wasn't him saying this is a problem and we're going to work on it, and then the next day 9/11 happens and we all forgot. They didn't forget. They had hearings for years, budgetary hearings over the next 4 years of Bush's first term, or three, whatever it was be. So it didn't go away. And also, if they didn't want you to know something, he wouldn't have come out and say it, regardless of what's going to happen next. Regardless of what's going to happen the next day or the day after that. They just wouldn't tell us. Okay, and then everyone in Building 7 got the day off. That is just that's just not true. I don't know where you heard that. I'm going to be polite and assume that you're not making that up, but there's literally no basis in fact. So the 9/11 airspace over America was closed for the several days after 9/11. So the bin Laden family was allowed to exit the country, but it wasn't just them. It was a lot of Saudi nationals who were afraid that there was going to be an increase in hate crimes, and there was. There was a 1,600% increase in hate crimes against Middle Eastern people in the United States from 2000 to 2001, and really it only started in September 2001. And yeah, so the people that were related to bin Laden were also estranged from him. They were not connected to him. They had no interaction. There was no money transfer. It was all separate because of his radical views. They pushed him away. The people that were in the country that had the bin Laden name were mainly students, college students, high school students. And yeah, they were evacuated along with their families. Again, if this was a conspiracy that was pre-planned, why would they not simply remove them the day before 9/11? When there'd be no suspicion at all. So Occam's razor, you got to go for what's the simplest thing sometimes, and this is just trying to take something and retroactively assign some malicious intent to it. Okay, permission from Bush, he had nothing to do with it. Flew out of America. The CIA was going to blow up a subway in New York and blame it on Cuba to start a war with them, but Kennedy said no. So I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that. I know there's Operation Northwoods, where they were planning to have an airplane blown up over the Caribbean, and then they were going to send a tape-recorded message saying that it was Cuba and that we're under attack and all that kind of stuff. That was never put into place. That was never actually operationally planned. Like, they didn't like have that lined up and they just had to have somebody sign off on it. Like, that was something that was talked about. It was mentioned. They mentioned a lot of shit. And ultimately, of course, it didn't happen. You want proof? I would say anything, but there's too many people that have been killed. Yeah, so I don't know why. That's not true. Do some research. It's quite obvious what's going on. So I did do my research. I wrote a whole book about it. This is available. It will be released August 6th. So I'm going to put a thing in the description of my channel on how to order a copy or pre-order a copy. But that person definitely needs to read this.